Hello, and welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast. And now, here's your host, Joe Dolce.
Greetings, and welcome to another episode of the Brave New Weed podcast. Tonight, we have a great interview with a man who studied herbology and the mixture of herbs and cannabis to create wellness tinctures. Tinctures that have been selling off the shelves in California for many, many years. And he's got a lot to talk about in terms of how these potions and lotions can really benefit our lives. And it's Mitcho Thompson. You'll come back and we'll hear him in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk about some news. Matthew, let's talk about some of the good news in cannabis these days, or some of the weird news. I thought the weirdest news involved Elon Musk. Did you find this sort of a very surprising story?
So, for me, yes, I find it insanely surprising. So to cut through,
not that Elon Musk smokes pot. You didn't find that surprising?
Well, apparently Elon Musk doesn't smoke a lot of pot.
No, but he was on a pod. Okay, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, smoking a joint.
The crux of the story and what brought it to our attention was obviously it's an internet meme now. It's caused like a 6% drop in Tesla's stock holdings, but Elon Musk was on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and in the video feed and on the show, smokes from a blunt that he was passed by Joe Rogan. So, smoking legal weed
in a legal state,
in a state where it's legal, a guy whom everyone sort of assumes probably does way harder drugs than smoke cannabis.
Of course.
And
I hate that expression, hard drugs, by the way. It's a terrible expression.
Yeah?
Come on, taking psychedelics, what's hard about that?
Well, I guess when I think hard drugs, I think like chemically hard drugs, like cocaine, heroin. But
I wouldn't think Elon Musk is doing a lot of those.
No, probably
drugs.
not.
I would think more in the psychedelic sphere.
Probably a lot of MDMA.
A little bit, maybe.
That's all speculation. I shouldn't do that.
He's got some emotional issues, so MDMA might make sense.
Maybe. Who knows? But anyway, going on, the most banal thing you can think of, taking a hit off a blunt. He made the comment about like, it's pretty good. Also pointed out that he does not regularly smoke cannabis, so it was a different experience to him. Immediate reaction of loss of faith from shareholders at Tesla, a 6% drop in the stock value, and now actually questions about whether or not Tesla is an investable company.
So when Steve Jobs talked about using psychedelics, no one dropped the Apple stock, did they? The value of Apple never went down. What is this bullshit?
When Barack Obama was president of the United States and said, I'm pretty sure inhaling was the point, we didn't like impeach him from the office of president.
Ridiculous. These people, these investors should just go. You know what? If I was Elon Musk, I would take his company private for that alone.
I would probably go to a shareholders meeting and spark up.
It's so insulting, isn't it?
It really seems like making mountains out of molehills. Obviously, there's some sort of internal drama there in their company, and they're just focusing in on this as a catalyst. But I think it's really unfair. I think it's really just perpetuates the stigma.
It does.
Of pot smokers, dirty, unreliable pot smokers.
Not inventive entrepreneurs.
I mean, it just...
Nonsense.
It's nonsensical that this is even a story. So, Elon, we got your back. Come on our show and defend yourself. How about that?
Let's talk about it.
Because we're on your side.
We'll give you an edible instead of a joint.
Shifting gears a little bit, another big name floating around in the news and associated with cannabis, an American favorite actress, Olivia Newton-John.
Australian.
Well,
she's
popular
Australian
here in America.
She's Australian.
All right, sorry to Australian Hollywood
and
for claiming your shining star.
What is she? What's her news?
Well, Olivia Newton-John tragically struggling in the battle against cancer.
What kind of cancer?
I'm not sure.
Oh, don't worry about it. And she's using cannabis to work on it?
Yeah, and not only has chosen to incorporate cannabis into her treatment, but has taken a public stage and is publicly advocating for her cannabis use. In her cancer
ONJ,
treatment.
go ONJ. There was another celebrity who sort of came out as a cannabis last week. Who was it?
Well, honestly, it was very bizarre, and I glanced at the story. I didn't see it, but apparently hitting the speech circuit, a Fran Drescher.
Oh, God.
From The
Really?
Nanny.
Really?
Yeah, is also out beating the bushes
The
and
nanny
saying,
uses cannabis.
saying that cannabis use is crucial to health, and well-being.
Let's get her on the show. Come on, Fran. Come on and talk to us.
Yeah, I would love that. The last item for news, Joe, and this gets a little bit more politically heady, but it goes back to something that we were talking about last week. So I was attempting to concisely explain to you the DEA's quota expansion for 2019.
Yes.
Right? This is the Drug Enforcement Agency's sanctioned weed growing.
Yes.
And a bill has been introduced to Congress. It's a 40-person bipartisan co-sponsored bill authored by Representative Matt Gaetz, who is a Republican out of Florida. And this would force the DEA to approve those pending grow location applications that we were talking about.
Well, so for the people who haven't heard the last episode,
Go back and listen to the last episode.
Yeah, you should always listen to every episode religiously, of course. But the government only allows cannabis to be grown for research purposes in one facility. It's the University of Mississippi.
And a specific amount.
Yeah,
at
I know.
Yeah.
So now the DA of all places is saying we need to increase the allotment. So it's going to try to give it to different states. Is that the idea? Different grows in different states?
Yeah, so these applications have apparently been
For years. They've been there for years.
just on ice.
Yeah.
People have been applying saying, hey, we want to be a grow location. And the DEA just sleeps on it because they don't want to get involved. But now that they are looking for an increase in the quotas, an increase in the amount of cannabis grown, and it's a very significant increase that they're asking for in the coming year, they have been looking at where that's going to come from. This is congressional action directing the DEA to just auto-approve those applications that they've been pending. So it's a real roundabout way, but what this signals is this 40-person bipartisan group is pushing the DEA to act.
Yeah, this is a move to another subtle, small move towards legalization.
Coming from
The DEA.
both sides of the aisle.
No, and nobody's friend in cannabis, the DEA.
Well-
so it's really an interesting sign. I think it's worth keeping your eyes on.
Obviously, we still run into the roadblock that is Jeff Sessions could just say
Beauregard
no.
may say no, but but the government is inching along.
Joe and I will continue to publish every episode of the Brave New Weed podcast for free for you, our listeners. But we could always use your support. If you've got a little extra change rattling around in your pocket, you can cruise over to patreon.com/bravenewweed and become a supporter of the show. Everything that you'd pledge to support helps us to increase the guests that we can have on the show, even eventually the frequency of the show. And we have a great set of rewards out there, including copies of Joe's book, invites to special events that we will do in New York City, all sorts of fun things. So if you're enjoying the podcast and you would like to support us, visit patreon.com/bravenewweed today.
So there I was in Sebastopol, California. Sebastopol, have you ever been to Sebastopol, Matthew?
No, I can't say as I
It's
have.
one of the original sort of hippie towns in Northern California, in Sonoma County. And I don't want to, by the way, that is not meant to disparage, because I am a huge fan of the hippies. I think they found like the best places on earth to live and visit. Okay, I think they did some great things.
If it weren't for the hippies, we wouldn't have Colorado Springs.
Exactly. And we wouldn't have Sebastopol, as a matter of fact. So Sebastopol was an early... it was one of the early dispensaries in California were started, and one of the early ones was called Peace in Medicine. And our guest tonight, Mitcho Thompson, is one of the founders of Peace in Medicine, and he's worked there. And when he left his life in San Francisco and moved to Sebastopol, he also enrolled in an herbal institute and studied herbology for a number of years. And now, when we spoke, I visited him at his home. He's got an acre in the backyard where every herb and a few cannabis plants is growing in unbelievable proportions because the climate there is extraordinary. And he gathers the herbs, dries them, soaks them in alcohol and other sort of potions, and makes these extraordinary herbal tonics, which have been sold in Peace and Medicine, which is now bought by another larger conglomerate of dispensaries called Spark. And these tinctures will be available to the general public in a much wider way. I found this interesting because, to me, cannabis is a foundational part of this wellness movement. And a lot of us think, well, we know the stats say that wellness is going to subsume illness as a category economically. The investment and the money in wellness products is going to be much greater than those in illness, which, if you think about it, that is amazing, right?
Sure.
These tinctures that he'll mix cannabinoids with, I don't know, different valerian and skullcap and coxcomb. I can't tell you all the names of them because I'm not educated enough. But they are interesting, they are effective, and they're not psychoactive because the cannabis is not decarboxylated. So you're getting a benefit and you're not feeling anything from it, which is a very interesting thing. So let me stop waffling on here and let's get to Mitcho. He's going to explain it much better than I can. Okay, I'm here in Sebastopol, California, one of the ground zero places of legal cannabis in the United States. It's sort of a postmodern hippie place, would you say? I would agree. I would say that's what it is. And I'm at the home of Mitcho Thompson. There's an emu outside. I've never seen an emu. There are ducks. And there is an incredible herb garden of pretty much every herb under the sun, and which is what he uses to make his incredible potions. Thanks for joining me, Mitcho.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
Well, it's in your home, so it is.
It is nice to be here.
Your house. So the reason I want to talk to you is because you do these amazing blends of cannabinoids with other herbal potions. Tell me how you began doing this, how it's evolved. Well, we'll talk one question at a time.
Well, Okay. Well, I got into herbal medicine early on, many years ago, when I was working with young homeless youth in San Francisco, and we were trying to come up with alternative medicine forms to help them. And so that was where the interest to help them do many things, including kick drugs like methamphetamines or heroin. And so just that was one of the reasons that sort of dragged me in. I've always liked plants, and I always did play with plants, but early on it was more like witchy and fun, but I got into serious herbalism over time.
And tell me how you did that, actually, because it's a really interesting story, and it involves one of the first dispensaries in California as well, which was called Peace and Medicine, which still exists right down the road.
Yeah, I went to school at the California School of Herbal Studies up here in Forestville. And I was still living in San Francisco, running the drop-in. And in fact, I drove by this house for several years before I knew I was going to live up here. And so I went through several programs, including a clinical herbalist program where we saw patients in a free clinic. And it was intense. But it was a good experience for me. And that was when I started growing a lot of herbs.
Were you always a believer in this stuff? Because a lot of people think it's very witchy. I don't at all. I think these medicines are very powerful. But tell me about your own skepticism. Was there skepticism?
No, not really. Actually, when I was younger, in my early 20s, I would make like sleep teas and things. I'd make some, and I started making tinctures. I made some for my mom early on, and so I started exploring on my own. And herbalism is one of those things where actually there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of good books, and so you can learn a lot on your own with it. And especially the easier, milder herbs. There's a lot of really nice, safe herbs out there.
So tell me how the cannabis herbal connection began. First of all, and what do you call yourself? Are you like an alchemist, a wizard, a Wiccan? What do you call yourself?
I like wizard. I don't know. I have many names. The herbalist is really a good one too. Some people call me shaman, but that's subjective. But we do call our farm the shamanastery. So like shaman's monastery when we moved up here. But I don't know. I go by many names. How's that sound?
It sounds fine. I think you can go by as many names as you want, as far as I'm concerned. No, but tell me. So, what provoked this idea of mixing cannabinoids with plants? Feel free to talk here.
Okay. Well, one of the things was back to working with the homeless youth at the drop-in center, that we were trying to deal with the drug addictions and young people trying to get off drugs. And things like methadone really honestly didn't work. I saw that from my man. I did this program for almost 14 years, and I didn't really see those things as helpful. But what I did see was helpful. Young people would tell me that that cannabis was helping them. And so we came up with a formula where we were using cannabis and kava and skullcap and passion flower, and young people could use those. And I mean, it wasn't legal to give that out. This is at the same time Mary Rathburn was giving out brownies and all those things. This is that same time period in San Francisco. It's and so I was making these potions for the young people to go away and drop out for a couple of days, and it would help them. It would ease them through the dope sickness or the period where it was just so hard. And it really did help. I saw it help quite a few young people.
Okay, so we move forward in the story. We move into Sebastopol. It's a really interesting place. I think actually the first mayor of Sebastopol was one of the founders of Peace and Medicine, the dispensary you helped found it as well. And how did we start mixing? I mean, because at the time tinctures were sort of new and interesting. And also, well, let's start there, but then tell me what a tincture is.
Okay, well, it's really interesting. A tincture is basically is herbs that have been soaked or macerated, is the term, in either alcohol or vinegar. There's many things you can use, glycerin, but cannabis specifically is a high proof alcohol because it melts the resin. And the thing is, it feels like tinctures were new when I first started doing them. No dispensaries had them really. When Peace and Medicine started carrying our tinctures, we were one of the first to really carry nice tinctures. But the reality is that every major pharmaceutical company made them. I think, are you aware of this?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
In the early 1900s.
Yes. Until like the 1930s, there was the Rockefellers, and I don't remember who else, commissioned a man named Flexner to do a report on what form of medicine was the most lucrative. It's called the Flexner Report. I think it came out in like 1922. And he determined through his studies that the most lucrative form of medicine was where people had to take pharmaceuticals that you owned the patent on, not growing their own medicine. So immediately the eclectics and the Thompsonian schools of medicine, the herbal schools of medicine were debunked, and they were defunded. They were made illegal. Basically, they set up a form of medicine for profit. And that's a real thing. You can find that online. And it's a real thing. And it was funded by the wealthy families of America. And so these people who own the pharmaceutical companies did this. And so that's, I think, at the kernel of this whole issue around cannabis even today, and why it's still illegal, is because there are people who are making too much money and they don't want something that people can grow and heal themselves with.
Brilliant. I did not know that history. Thank you for the education. Love that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, but tell me how you started putting these herbs together. Tell me how some of the formulas work and what they involve.
Well, a lot of formulas, and a lot of this is really straight out of American herbalism, or Western herbalism. And I had some really great teachers at the California School of Herbal Studies, and David Hoffman was one of them. He's a British herbalist and a fellow, and I also Gail Julian was another one, and Jim Hall. I had a lot of amazing teachers, and there's still amazing teachers. The school is I think the oldest herb school in America. It was started by Rosemary Gladstar, who has also helped start Traditional Medicinals, which is a very large herb company here in Sebastopol. You can get their tea in Safeway. And so this area has a very rich, deep history in herbal medicine. And so coming here, it just sort of it was a natural fit. And cannabis has, until recently in history, was a medicinal herb. It was part of the materia medica of the ancient Hebrews. They used it even, mainly they used it infused in oils, like anointing, as we might think about. There's some recipes, you can find one in the Bible. And it's interesting because that cannabis has sort of been erased from that. Hildegard von Bingen was another famous herbalist, and she used cannabis quite a bit. But if you look at the English translations done after the 1980s, all of her information about cannabis has been deleted. It's been censored. It's gone. So you have to go to her original writing or earlier translations, and you can find that information, but they're trying to erase that history. So cannabis has long been an established part of forms of Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine. It's there.
And cannabis, does it play particularly well with other herbs?
Yes, in fact, that's the thing about cannabis that I find really interesting is there are some certain plants that in schools of medicine you use to harmonize. Licorice is one in Ayurvedic medicine. It's called the Great Harmonizer. But cannabis does the same thing. You don't have to use a lot of cannabis in a cannabis tincture with other plants. It seems to actually bring out the best of the plants. And there have not been many studies, but I know studies on opioids show that cannabis increases the uptake of opioids. And so I'm assuming that it does that for a lot of other constituents in other plants. And the thing about these tinctures is most of them are not heated, so they're not getting people high. So people aren't grabbing a bottle of cannabis tincture to get high. And there's nothing wrong with getting high. In fact, I find it really interesting that our government frowns upon people getting high. A little euphoria during a terminal illness is a bad thing. And you would think that we would be thinking the opposite, that something that brings a little light and joy into someone's life when they're dealing with something heavy or chronic pain or a terminal illness is desirable. But we're not allowed to have fun in our healing.
We are, after all, founded by Puritans, yes, right? But wait, I'm looking at a bottle of one of your tinctures here, which has a gorgeous name called Disco Fiesta Tonic. Are you telling me if I take a little Disco Fiesta Tonic, I am not going to have psychoactivity?
Well, actually, this one you might, because this one has a cannabis glycerin that has been heated. So this one is Disco Fiesta Tonic because you're going to be up dancing all night. It's got yerba mate in it, which is a stimulant. Matina is very similar to caffeine.
It's morning here. I'm going to try some right now. Are you going to dance with me if I get on the table?
I'll put on some disco. I can put on some Gloria Gaynor, and you can take this and we can see what happens. Yeah. And so, there's a range of products. And so something like that, a Disco Fiesta Tonic is sort of more a stimulant, which is the same thing as coffee or yerba mate. Then there's other tinctures.
What's it mixed with? Tell us.
So this one has yerba mate, which is a really nice stimulating herb. It's the leaf that you use, and it's from South America. And this is actually from Guayaquil, which is a local company, and so it's fair trade yerba mate. And then it also has blood oranges, which I grow in here as a flavoring, and it has skullcap in it, which is a really nice nervine. And it has cacao. It has chocolate in it.
What's a nervine?
A nervine is a plant like the best one is skullcap, but believe it or not, catnip is another one, and lemon balm. They're plants that make you less nervous, basically, in a nutshell. They calm you down and ground you, but they're not a central nervous system depressant like an opioid. So they don't affect your driving. They don't affect your motor skills. They just kind of take the edge off. I love skullcap. It's my favorite herb. I use it constantly.
So it's like an awakener that doesn't make you revved? Is that the idea? Yeah. So I'm going to be disco dancing but not grinding? Is that the idea?
Yeah. Well, the reason is that because the yerba mate, like caffeine, can jack you up a little. It can create a little bit of an edge. If you drink a lot of coffee, you can get a little sketchy. So the nervine's in there sort of to like counterbalance that. So there's sort of checks and balances in these formulas. So they have a little something to bring you up, but also to like help you with your mental anxiety, or, there's all kinds of things that you can do with these plants.
Let's talk about some of the things you can do with these plants, because you have maybe 25, 24, 36 different formulas you make, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about some of them and what's in them and how they function and why people really like them. Okay.
All right. Well, here, let's go first. Well, I'm looking at the liniment. Liniment is a topical spray. And liniments are another old form of medicine, not just cannabis, but cannabis definitely. And then has peppermint in it. And believe it or not, peppermint's a really nice herb too for pain. In fact, menthol mentha is the family of mint. Menthol is in a lot of topical formulas. You know that tingly. It brings I think it's called rufation. It brings the blood flow to the skin. And so when you combine this peppermint with this cannabis, what it does is the peppermint has some numbing properties and increases the blood flow, which increases the uptake of the cannabis, and it pulls it into your skin. Your skin is eating. Yeah. Your skin is one of three ways we ingest any medicine or anything: your skin, your lungs, and your stomach. They were all part of the same fetal tissue in your little zygote. And so those three ways, your skin eats as much as your stomach and your lungs. Those things are, so that's why you smoke cannabis or you eat cannabis or you put it on your skin. And topical applications of cannabis are increasing. The whole the skin patches, the transdermal patches, they're not, everyone thinks that's a new idea. But again, we go back to the ancient Hebrews or the Mesopotamians. They were anointing people with these oils infused with herbs. The same thing. It's like a transdermal application.
They would stick a cloth or something, wrap a cloth around somebody's wound, somebody's pain. Is that what you're saying? And that's how it would absorb into the bloodstream?
Yeah, sometimes they would just soak linen and with, but they would also just do massage therapy. They would just rubbing it on the skin. Just an application of skin, and this could be oil or a salve, which is basically an oil that's been hardened off with maybe beeswax or some sort of wax.
Now, I know you make a lubricant, a sexual lubricant that's cannabis infused, and I've had various reports and various experiences with such lubricants. Sometimes they work, and often they don't. Does yours work, and how does it work? It ain't Viagra, is it?
No, it is not Viagra, and so it works because it is one, it's going into an area that is also receptive. I mean, that's why suppositories work so well, especially for people who can't hold food down. And so lubricant is just basically another way, a topical application, and it has cannabis, but it has other things. It has ginseng in it, and it has ginkgo in it. And ginkgo is a really another amazing herb. The leaves of the ginkgo tree, which is a really beautiful tree, it's a vasodilator. It means it opens up your blood flow, but specifically to the main artery that feeds your brain and your genitals. And that's why you see ginkgo they say ginkgo helps you remember things. Well, it doesn't help you remember. It just actually increases the blood flow to your brain, which makes your brain more efficient. Does that make sense?
And your genitals?
And your genitals, because just like your stomach and your skin and your lungs were part of the same fetal tissue, at that same time, your brain and your genitals were the same. And that's why so many people think with one or the other. Kind of.
Okay, since we're on this topic, what is the effect of a lubricant in the vagina and the anus? I mean, how does this? It's not making me hard. What's it making me?
Actually, I think it makes you more. It relaxes you. It's more of a relaxing way to ease some either anxiety, which some people have, or just relaxing, I guess. And so there's also that's a nervine in that as well. So there's something there to kind of help with that.
So when it has worked, when I've used it, I have actually found it sort of increases intimacy. Yes. Maybe that's about relaxing. I'm not really sure, but I think it breaks down a barrier. I don't know if you have. I mean, this is getting into the realm of metaphysical more, but any experience, any thinking about that?
Well, I will have to say that I know from my years of experience at Peace and Medicine, and I did many things, but I had the pleasure of working in the dispensary on a couple of days a week, on Friday evenings, actually, which is really fun. And I know that anecdotally, and also from personal experience, that cannabis is an aphrodisiac. And I think it is because it does, in smaller doses. You don't want it not in heavy doses where you have a panic attack, but in a smaller dose, it actually decreases that anxiety. But you find that with a lot of herbs. That's how they find out what's called proofing. What a plant can do to you is you take a mega dose, you overdose on it, and you see those symptoms. And often in lower doses, that's what that plant actually helps.
I just started feeling a little smarter. Maybe the disco is really working now. It's been a slow day. Tell me about another one of the most popular, or something else you really, really love in these blends.
Well, I have a really nice sleep tincture here that people really like, and it's actually relatively simple. It's an indica which is there's two types of cannabis. There's actually more than that, but there's a really baseline would say there's sativa, which is basically a cerebral sort of stimulating effect, and then there's indica, which is more of a down, which is more of a within, and it helps people go to sleep. So this sleep formula is hops, which puts people to sleep. That's why beer knocks you out. And it has passion flower, which doesn't actually put you to sleep, but is really nice it's another sort of nervine for nervous chatter. It helps you. Passion flower is specific for people who wake up in the middle of the night. Like they go to sleep, but then they wake up and they can't go back to sleep. Passion flower helps that tremendously. And so those three, the indica and the hops and the passion flower together, are really a nice combination. And I have so many people come back to me saying, wow, I haven't been able to sleep forever, and I tried this and I slept. And to have people tell you that it's changed their life is amazing. And I think any of those plants on their own work well, but together they combine so well, they synergize. It's like a deeper form of medicine.
Yeah, I know. The entire city of New York wants that in its water. So can you hurry up and get that exported, please? What about just for women?
So we have several formulas just for women, but I'll tell you the best one is the daytime formula, because and this was actually created by some of Peace and Medicine staff. Joe and Kelly were two of them, and they came to me and said I had been making a moon cycle formula for women with cannabis, but it had like cramp bark and black cohosh, traditionally women's medicine. And so I said, well, what do you crave at this time? And they were both saying coffee, chocolate. So we put together this formula with a CBD tincture. So it's not a non-psychoactive cannabis tincture. And with that, we put in that cramp bark and the black cohosh, but we also put in coffee, and we put in chocolate, and we put in cinnamon, which is a nice anti-inflammatory. And people love it. Women love it. No, it really does work. And
is it working for cramps? Cramps?
Yeah, it's working for the cramps, but also for some of the emotional stuff, and just the cravings for like the chocolate makes it just sort of a richer experience for someone to have this. And yeah, so it's sort of kind of helping with the cravings as well.
Do you make anything to stop the hot flashes? Because so many women I know, I'm dating myself, are really going through that a lot.
Well, that would be the moon cycle, the hot flashes. My friend's mother calls them private summers. Like that. And we have another one for women that is like an evening formula, which has valerian and lactuca in it, which are two other really amazing plants. Valerian, a lot of people might know valerian. It's a sedative. It's also a good anti-spasmodic, anti-cramping. And then lactuca is also really good for a lot of things. It's related to opium poppy. It's a legal form. It's mild. So it's not a strong opiate, but it still has some of those qualities. And so it helps take the pain away from the cramping.
So you grow a lot of your herbs here, and I mean, how easy is it for people to do this if they don't happen to live in the most fecund, climate on Earth, like most of us?
Yeah. Well, actually, a lot of these herbs are all found throughout the United States, like peppermint.
Yeah, but what about that opiate?
Oh, lactuca everyone knows it, but they don't know what it is. It's called wild lettuce. It's a weed. You see it it's in New York City in dirt lots. It's like a spiky little weed plant with a funky smell, and it grows pretty tall, like a tall, thin spike. And then if you break a leaf, there's a white, milky sap, and that's hence the name lactuca, like latex. And that little milky sap is similar to the same sort of milky sap you find in the seed pod of an opium plant. But the opium plant, whereas that's illegal, the lactuca is very safe and mild, not as strong, so it's legal to have. And you can get it at herb stores. Many herb stores sell it dried, and you can use it in tea form or in tincture form. And it's really nice. And so it's a nice little addition to some of these formulas.
Now, is it hard to make a tincture? I mean, are you always using sort of standard alcohol, standard things that you can buy in maybe a pharmacy or a liquor store?
You know what? It's actually really easy. And for most herbs, just straight up vodka would work. And there's different methods. There's like a standard method with a ratio of like 1 to 4, or 2 to 4, or 2 to 5. There's these, but I just prefer the folk method where you can fill a jar with herbs. Like, you can go out in your yard, if you have peppermint, fill a jar with peppermint, then add vodka to that jar and let it sit for about a month. Maybe shake it every couple of days, and then you strain it out, and the vodka has pulled out much of what was in the plant. Cannabis, you need a little higher proof alcohol because if you look at the cannabis plant, it's covered with those little crystals, the trichomes. And in those trichomes, that's where all the medicine is, the THC, and not all of it. But and so you got to melt that resin. And so resinous plants, and there's many other resinous plants like kava and even rosemary, myrrh, frankincense. There's some plants that are highly resinous, and so you need a high proof alcohol like Bacardi 151 or Everclear. Those, something that high is perfect. It'll get you better medicine. So if you try to make a tincture with cannabis and vodka, it won't be as strong. It doesn't work as well. It'll taste funky.
We need that Everclear.
Yes.
So what's really interesting about this, I see these sort of blends as huge going forward in the world of legal cannabis, and it's all about wellness,
Yes.
isn't it? So this is a very different model from illness.
Yes, and that was something we were talking about, is the current trend right now. I mean, our healthcare system is based on illness. The money is based on illness, and the medicine is based on illness. But what we're finding right now is the trend is that is declining, and the real money is being made in the wellness industry. And what that really means is that in maybe 5 to 10 years, if we look at our healthcare system and we look at the pharmaceutical companies, they will be focusing on keeping people well. The focus will not be on making money off of illness. It will be off of wellness. And that's a huge, huge shift. And that is happening right now. And I think cannabis is just part of this amazing movement of people taking charge of their path to wellness, and seeing that the money can be made that way is actually really exciting, because the current system is not working.
Let's talk about the money being made that way. So in the past, you've had a million different brands. Some of them are called Cannabis, or what's Granny's called? Granny Jane's. Okay. What are you? So what's going to happen with your brand? Where's it going to be distributed? How can people get access to it? Talk to us a little bit. What's it even going to be called?
Well, we have a company here in Sebastopol, and we're just starting. It's called Phytomagic. And Phytomagic will be producing these tinctures, probably releasing a few at a time as we go forward. And those, hopefully, you'll be able to find them because they contain cannabis, they will need to be purchased at a dispensary. But we are all now aware that anyone can walk into a dispensary. You don't need a doctor's note. You can walk right into a dispensary and purchase cannabis to try. And so theoretically, and maybe by next year, this time for certain, you will be able to purchase these things probably all over the state, I imagine. This is just a state permit. Currently, the states are sort of like little islands. There is no crossing over the state lines because for some odd reason, cannabis is federally illegal still. According to the federal government, cannabis is the most dangerous herb. It is more dangerous than heroin and has no known medical benefits. And that's a real issue. Because if they're going to say that and they're going to lie to us, and we all know that now by this time, I'm pretty sure most people are aware that cannabis is safe. In fact, it has the highest LD50 dose of any plant known. And LD50 dose means like half of the lab rats die at a certain dose. And I could certainly kill you with that peppermint sooner than I can kill you with that cannabis. And somehow the cannabis is illegal. And I look at all these other plants and I see some of them that are not dangerous but could certainly cause problems, and I see cannabis not causing problems, and yet cannabis is illegal. And that is a real conundrum, because it means, what else are we not being told, or what are the lies coming out? And right now that's a really big question right now with our current government. What are the lies, and what are the truths, and how do we fix this?
Maybe we fix this with some of your Cava Mellow. I'm not really sure, but you seem like you're on the precipice of a very large business. Do you plan to be producing this stuff in bulk to be really issued throughout the state? I mean, there's 40 million people who live in California. It's a mega economy, right? The sixth largest in the world. Is that your plan? Are you going to scale up, manufacture, put this stuff out there?
Yeah, we are. We're going to scale up, but what's really exciting about this is an opportunity to help small farmers. So I certainly am not able to grow enough peppermint to put in all that liniment, but there are other small farmers, and I'm part of a small group of farmers, and it's called the Sonoma County Herb Association. It's the Herb Exchange. And the Herb Exchange is like a brokering house where small farms can band together and fill large orders of herbs. It's amazing. And so I can purchase a lot of these herbs from local farmers here in Sonoma County to help them. So this company is not just going to be making cannabis, because we're purchasing these other herbs. And then the smaller cannabis farmers as well. If they have a permit to grow, which many of them do, but that's about all they have. They don't have a manufacturing permit. They don't have a permit to sell it. I can actually purchase that cannabis from small growers who grow organically or sustainably, and we can use that to make this really amazing medicine.
So I really admire that business model. It's very ethical, and it's very supportive of the entire food chain. And to me, it feels very much at the root of what a lot of people always dreamed about with cannabis, and certainly not at the root of what's currently going on legally. So I really admire that. And you're going to have to keep us appraised of how all this develops. Are you going to be looking for investment?
Yes, we are soon. We are going to be doing that pretty soon, in about a couple weeks, I think, from now. Because we're at the point now where we're outfitting we have a downtown location here in Sebastopol. Sebastopol, again, it's such an amazing place. It is a really supportive place. It created a model ordinance years ago, and that was written by Craig Litwin and Linda Kelly, who, two former mayors. And this ordinance was what allowed peace in medicine to exist. And it allowed us to help change the way people saw cannabis. I really do feel like peace in medicine did help change the movement of cannabis and the way dispensaries operated across the nation. And so I'm really proud of that. But that would not have happened anywhere but Sebastopol. We were blessed to be here in the right place at the right time. And the town is still really, really receptive and supportive of cannabis. And maybe that is because of our hippie roots here. My next door neighbor, the late George Breck, used to say that Sebastopol was where the lost colony of hippies formed, because their VW vans broke down on the way to Arcata. And there are a lot of people here, and there are like third generation families whose grandparents, they came to San Francisco for the summer of love. They didn't like the city, and they came here.
I'm so glad to have met you here in the lost colony of all hippies. I think this is really fascinating. I know this is going to be a great business, and I'm very happy that you're doing it with the same sort of ethical underpinnings. Do you teach any classes? Because, Matt, one day I would love to make some video classes of you. I would call it Potions in Motion, because you move a lot. I know you are definitely vibing on Disco Fiesta Tonic. But do you do any videos? Do you do any sort of online learning?
Yeah, in fact, I think you can find one if you go to the Emerald Cup. Last year's Emerald Cup, they have a video of me teaching a class on how to make herbal medicine with cannabis. And I do it also I've done it for the Herb Exchange. And I'm a former chancellor of Oaksdam University. I ran the North Bay campus up here for many years. So I was involved in Oaksdam from early on. And that's still going down there. So yeah, I do. I have a history of teaching, and I love to teach. It's really fun. And I think I'm going to be teaching another cannabis-specific class in October up here in Santa Rosa.
So let us know. I want to come if I can. Okay. I'd love to learn this stuff. I think it's really interesting. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us. Anything else we want to talk about?
I don't know. No, just how that is really exciting. And I actually feel like this is another possibility for the future of cannabis. I mean, it doesn't just have to be something that is all about money and all about this industry that is emerging with taxing. And I mean, that wasn't the original intent of even the vote of people. The vote was not to increase the tax revenue of the state. It was really to increase the accessibility and safety of cannabis for the general population. And so I feel like this is another model that people should look at. People should look at other alternative forms of cannabis industry.
Other forms of cannabis capitalism, if you will, right?
Yes, yeah.
Thanks so much, Mitcho Thompson. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.
You can like and follow the Brave New Weed podcast on all the best social media platforms. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed, or on Twitter @bravenewweed, or Instagram @bravenewweed.
That was great. Thanks, Mitcho.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic for me. I know, Joe, I keep pestering you about finding me somebody who can talk herbs with me because of the whole idea of creating this like tobaccoless spliff.
Oh, you want to smoke, right?
Thing.
Right.
So this sounds like a lot of great information that's applicable to that as well.
And we're going to see a lot more of this stuff coming on in the very near future. So I think it's worth paying attention to.
Awesome.
I'm so glad he was able to join us tonight. I was so glad I was there and able
Thank
to
you for
catch
that.
him. Yeah. I
would thought that to wrap up the episode tonight, I would ask you
Yes.
a couple questions because you're just back from California.
Yes.
So what is life like on the ground?
In the cannabis business?
Yeah, in the business, in the world, in the consumers.
Everybody in the business that I saw was pulling their hair out because regulations have come on and they've come on heavy. And, there was a time when there was very little product in a lot of dispensaries because they had to pull the product, repackage it, relabel it. I mean, this could have been done more elegantly, undoubtedly. All right. But it was clunky. It was nerve-wracking. People lost a lot of product. They lost a lot of time. They're now getting their feet back on the ground slowly. But most people in the business are just pulling their hair out. Now, on the street, however, it's so normal. It's just so normal. You're going to, you need your cannabis, you walk down to the dispensary on the corner. It's not...
Yeah, there's not like the
There's
big
nothing.
the big
It's-
fear of like
no.
gangs of pot smokers
And
hanging
there's
around.
San Francisco's always been a cloudy city on every level. Let's put it that way. It's never been a place where you didn't smell a lot of cannabis smoke. But I mean, I was in San Francisco primarily. It felt exactly the same to me, which is the big so what? Okay.
The big so what?
It's legal. So what? I mean, there's a lot of people doing very interesting things. I went to visit a place called Flocana, the Flocana Institute.
Yeah.
Some folks bought an old winery, one of the Fetzer wineries up in Mendocino, and are turning it into a production facility, but also a place where you can go as a tourist and see how things are made and how things grow, and it's going to be
like agritourism.
sort of like agroturismo in California.
Oh, wow.
And that makes sense. Look, you can do it with wine. We're in the wine country. So cannabis and wine, they're sort of similar in terms they grow in the ground. They make things that we like. This is not a big stretch. So that's quite interesting, I think. And just the fact that there's a level of product and sort of a level of, I guess you would call it so whatness, where it's just not an issue, and that's such a relief. It's being in the way the world is, but legally isn't.
A brave new weed world indeed.
It's a brave new weed world. Thank you for that plug, Matthew.
Absolutely.
See you guys next week. Come back.
Thanks for listening to the Brave New Weed podcast. This episode and all future episodes are made possible by amazing listeners like yourself. If you like what you've heard, we encourage you to show your support by giving $1 a month for special access and rewards on patreon.com/bravenewweed. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @bravenewweed. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed. And remember, you can always find more information about us or information discussed in each episode by pointing your favorite browser to bravenewweed.com.